What's up, world of podcasts? My name is Shay Baby.
And this is Charlie.
And welcome back to
We the Jury podcast.
We know our first episode was a little rough. We're fixing out the kinks and all the crinkles, and it's going to take us a little bit. But if you push through and you're back for this episode, thank you so very much.
We love having ya here.
But I did say two things that I kind of do want to correct because I don't want to lie to you. I just want to give you straight facts. Now, I said it several times. I don't know why I did that, but Ted had 3 siblings, 4 in total, including himself. He had a half-brother, and then he had 2 half-sisters. And then I also said, for some reason, I don't know why I would say this either, but when Ted's grandpa was tested for homozygosity, which is the key indicator of incest, I said that the info was found in his death certificate, and I actually meant to say it was found on a lab studies report. In the last episode, we left off with the girly friend, the very first girly friend, Diane Marjorie Jean Edwards. Diane Marjorie Jean Edwards. I feel like it's kind of a tongue twister for me for some reason. But she would be the rich and ambitious lady that would fall into Ted's lap, and he would just cherish her, become so obsessed with her, and just strive to be a better man. But nothing lasts forever. And the destruction of Ted. Not because it's Diane's fault, but because it really impacted him very much so that he was rejected by Diane. He would then become the killer that he is today.
You really believe that, everything comes to an end, every relationship?
I think that there are seasons for things. Things come and go. I don't think that nothing stays the same forever, no.
I know, but you said, and obviously nothing lasts forever, though, and you said they broke up. I think that you can make a relationship last forever.
But you eventually die.
Yeah, but that's the end.
That didn't last forever.
That's forever for me.
I don't know. Maybe I look at it from a very dark, brutal way. I think you can if it's really, really true love. But it wasn't true love between Diane and Ted. Diane, and even in the later days, and I quote, mentioned that she thought Ted was pitifully weak.
Right.
He lacked maturity.
Yeah, she broke up with him around the time that she was graduating from University of Washington. She felt that he was a bit naive, irresponsible, immature, and she was just kind of ready to move on.
I mean, she had to like him for a reason, So
yep.
He had to have some kind of charm and be somewhat of a man for her to even date him in the first place. So it's like when you date somebody, you can't go saying bad things about them because you dated them. You know what I mean?
Well, she came from a very well-off-to-do family financially, and they were also very political, so he really looked up to her and her family, and as everything that he should be, he wanted to fit that mold. So when she ended that relationship and essentially told him, "You're not good enough, you're not mature enough, I've got bigger places I'm getting to." So
see ya.
He was very upset by that, and so I think he had misdirected rage in the sense that his victims, most of them, would have a lot of the same physical features, characteristics. They had long, dark hair, specifically parted down the middle, and they were almost all co-eds. We do have a couple young children as well.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
And they were known to have larger noses.
Yeah.
I just wanted to
I've never noticed that myself, but after my girl mentioned that, yeah.
If you look at them.
Yeah, a little bit.
He had a type.
He had a type.
I don't got no type. No. He had a type.
All right, so in mid-1970, they had broken up. Bundy was so upset about this. He did re-enroll at University of Washington. He seemed to pull himself together. He seemed now goal-oriented, focused, this time as a psychology major. He became an honor student and was well regarded by his professors, and he graduated in 1972. So he really pulled his act together.
Successful man.
He was in pursuit of that while he was with Diane Edwards, and she broke up with him. He absolutely took that very personally, but he also still was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to measure up.
Didn't he, wasn't he in campaigns as well? Didn't he have a political career?
He did. For a short period of time, he was a very, very strict Republican, and so he did work for the Republican Party. He was accused at one point, and televised for this, of political spying.
Oh, yeah, well, he was a peeper.
Yeah.
So that would make sense.
Yeah, you can look more in detail about that, but yes, he did dabble a little bit in the political field.
Nice.
While he was studying to get his degree.
He really was trying to show her up.
Oh, yeah.
And I changed.
Yeah, and she comes back later, they do meet back up again, and you'll see, he's got vengeance on his mind. He doesn't want to kill her, but he does want to get back at her. And he's willing to let years.
Well, he does. He reels her back in,
He
and
does.
then he cuts her off completely.
Basically to just say, oh, now I'm good enough, but I don't want you anymore.
Right, because that's what she did to him. You long for her, you got her back, and then you were like,
Well, he was in a different relationship at the
Ain't good enough.
time. He was in a relationship with Liz at the same time that he met back up with Diane and pursued a short relationship with her.
He was juggling.
What happens is, while he is with, remember the name Liz Kendall? They dated for several years. While they were together, he did meet back up with Diane. He pursued a relationship with Diane behind Liz's back. This lasted for not too long. Bundy actually did propose to Diane. He got a yes from Diane. That's what he wanted.
So during this whole time that he was prepping himself and getting himself better, he was with Liz, tricking Diane.
Yeah, like this was a whole long revenge scheme.
So basically several of these relationships that we're talking about are all happening at the same time.
Yeah,
Like,
so
my boy went from having no girlfriends
to
having
juggling.
to having a ton of girlfriends.
Join the damn circus.
He a dog. He a player.
In 1974, he got accepted into law school at the University of Utah, and he studied as a student until 1975 when he was finally arrested for the kidnapping of Carol DeRange. That's another important name if you can remember. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get into... We're going to start with the victims and survivors of 1974. And you'll notice a couple of things here. The first thing is, Bundy did take some interesting measures to try to keep from getting caught. One being he tried to match different cult calendars. So the first thing I thought of was like, don't they do something monthly? And you will notice a pattern, particularly a kill, almost every month or bi-monthly at times during his kill sprees. So this first group of victims that we're going to go over are all related to the same area. All of their remains are correlated to the same area. And I want that to be known because he did come back to visit his victims after they were dead. And that is where the necrophilia comes in.
So you're telling me that he took people there, or took these women there, and kept them there after they were dead?
He did. He
What?
revisited the sites of where he put the remains of his victims, and necrophilia is the sexual desire towards corpses.
In my brain, I wasn't thinking that he went back to them. I was thinking that he would obviously rape them, murder them, and then he would have sex with their dead body and then just be done and like bury them or like get rid of them.
No.
I had absolutely no clue that he went back to them.
Yes, because I think the climax for him did happen during the killing itself. That's what got him off, his rocks off. But yes, so he would like to relive, and he would come back, and he would revisit, and he would have sex with the bodies again until they were too putrefied to have sex with anymore. Yes.
I'm so sorry, but it's already like bad enough that he like has sex with like dead bodies, but like after they start like getting nasty and smelly and start eroding,
The natural process of
that's just a horrible
decomposition.
picture.
Yeah.
That's a horrible picture for my brain.
I think he was trying to relive it each time, but I don't think any revisit was nearly as satisfying as the initial murder for him. Even in his entire life, even after being committed, and being on death row even, he had a very difficult time talking about the necrophilia. He already spoke in like whispers and would talk in the third person, but necrophilia was one thing that he did not really want to discuss from beginning until the very end of them.
Because he is ashamed.
I mean, honestly,
Or it's like,
who wouldn't be?
nobody ever wants to like tell on themselves, so probably he was just like...
I don't think he's ashamed though because of the atrocity of it. I think he's ashamed because
Everybody knows.
there's something so sad about it. It doesn't take much power to do that to a corpse.
Like,
it takes just a
whacked up-
fucked up mental.
Yeah,
you know what I
wacky,
mean?
fucked up,
Yeah.
estranged, damaged brain to like want to do any of those things.
Our first victim, January 4th of 1974, Karen Sparks. She was 18 years old. Now, she is often identified as Joni Lins in Bundy literature. So I think that could possibly be an alias. However, I mostly see Karen Sparks, so that's what I'm going to use. She was a student attending the University of Washington in Seattle when she was bludgeoned and sexually assaulted in her bed as she slept.
Bludgeoned.
But literally, Bundy had used a bar from her bed frame to beat
Damn.
her with. Yeah. And she was found the following morning by her roommates with the metal bar still inside her vaginal canal.
No.
What I'm surprised
I'm
at...
so sorry. I'm like, right now, sitting here, because that just makes me...
That's what I'm saying. I'm so surprised that the roommates didn't hear anything during the attack, as brutal as he was. And this becomes a pattern of his, because he goes after younger co-eds, and co-eds have roommates. College. They have roommates.
Yeah, like, how did you not hear?
Well, I don't want to victim roommate shame. But yeah, like, he had to have been so stealthy, and he was quick with it, too. Now, get this. She survived, but she was in a 10-day coma, and after awakening, she suffered lifelong injuries.
Just imagine the pain she had to go through for those... Oh, my gosh. In the vagina.
Oh, what I want to know is, why was she his first victim if she, in fact, was? Now, do you remember that theory about that one girl when he was younger? He was...
Oh yeah, when he was a newspaper boy, and I think they lived like very close to one another. They were about like 2 miles away from one another.
Okay.
And their house was on his route when he would deliver the newspapers, and little girl, waiting for the newspaper boy to come by, would be at the end of the road, and that's kind of how they made their connection a little bit.
So I think she died somehow, because I just know that there's a lot of belief that he could have been involved, even though we don't have any substantial evidence.
I know her body was never found, and I'm pretty sure that Bundy later confessed to killing a little girl and leaving her in the orchards, but
Oh yeah, and there was an orchard by the Burrs family too.
right, but I don't think they found anything there.
February 1st, 1 month later roughly, Linda Ann Healy, 21 years old, she gave the local ski reports, and she was followed by Bundy from a local bar to her apartment around midnight and was bludgeoned with a crowbar after she'd fallen asleep. Strangely though, Bundy removed her nightgown. He hung it on a hanger neatly in her closet. So her bloody nightgown, put it on a hanger, put it in the closet. He redressed her in different clothes. He made the bed and then abducted her through the window.
Wait, he hung the bloody nightgown in the closet?
And made the bed, yeah. So initially it probably looked undisturbed, other than the fact that, she wasn't fucking there. But I mean, if you just peeked into the room, you wouldn't see any blood.
Yeah, it would look like nothing was
That's
going
what
on.
I assume. So yeah, he abducted her through the window. It is believed that she was then decapitated and dismembered post-mortem. Her jawbone alone was recovered at Taylor Mountain near Issaquah, Washington in 1975. So, being that it was her jawbone, this did allow for dental records to at least verify her identity. But this is one of quite a few victims whose remains were left at Taylor Mountain.
At the mountains.
Yes, that's why it's almost kind of referred to as series sometimes too. This is the Taylor Mountain series.
Interesting. So, I think we'll notice as you continue down the victims list that he had a liking for really nice sights and places he enjoyed that he felt comfortable at. I feel like that's where he takes a lot of his victims. First one's the mountains.
Yeah, he was very comfortable in the mountains. He was very comfortable skiing too. That comes up quite a bit.
Right.
So March 12th, another month later roughly, Donna Gail Manson, 19 years old. She was abducted by Bundy while walking to a campus jazz concert at Evergreen State College in Olympia, Washington. But she was never reported being seen at the concert, and she was not reported missing for almost a week.
Wow.
Yeah, reason being is she was kind of flighty. She was described as kind of flighty, and she was also slightly depressed at the time of her death. So it wasn't uncommon for her to withdraw for a couple of days, unfortunately.
I feel like, though, what shitty friends. Because, first of all, if my friend didn't show up to the concert we were going to, I'd be blowing their phone up. But during that time, I think, women started to be more independent. And they didn't.
Yeah, that has to kind of do with the history going on at the time.
Right. It was liberation of women, and they were starting to roam and be able to go places.
It was the 70s. The term serial killer, it either hadn't been coined yet or was so not commonly used at the time. The 70s,
Yeah, well, Bundy was one of the first of his kind.
He was. And while all of that was going on in the 70s, there was a lot of like free sex, love, and drugs and all of that. Yeah, so unfortunately she wasn't reported missing right away because she was going through some things. And so just a little side note here, guys. If you know a friend's going through a hard time, try to make time to check up on them anytime that you can. I feel like that would be a good thing to take from this.
For sure. Yeah, don't just think that it's nothing.
Yeah, you never know. You think
You
it's
want
not...
to give people their space, but you also want to make sure that they're just genuinely okay. Because I think all more the reason to look for her if she's gone, even for a day or two, because she's been depressed. So I just don't let people just go like that.
Bundy did later claim that her remains were at the Taylor Mountain site, but they were never found. There is speculation that a found partial remains of a Jane Doe near Eatonville in 1978 could have belonged to Manson. However, all evidence was destroyed before a positive forensic identification could be made. So I'm thinking that that case was closed and they didn't have what they needed. So April 17th, Susan Elaine Rancourt, 18 years old, she disappeared after attending an evening advisors meeting. So she had a job interview at Central Washington State College in Ellensburg, Washington. She was described by friends as a smart and clever girl. She averaged a 4.0 GPA, and she worked really hard to pay for her schooling. So Bundy never revealed how she died, but her skull also alone was recovered at Taylor Mountain in 1975.
That's so sad. Baby girl is just trying to be on her grind and
yeah, it seemed like she
life. And this man just yeet.
Yeah, she seemed like she was a really smart girl. It says she worked hard to pay for school. So May 6th, Roberta Kathleen Parks, she was 22. She vanished from Oregon State University while on her way to meet friends for coffee. I think this was like very late hours, possibly early AM hours, but she never made it. She was majoring in world religions, which just kind of gives me a little bit of a perspective of what she might have been like as a person. To study world religions, you have to be extraordinarily open-minded and diverse. She must have been a really cool person to have around.
Yeah.
That's what I get from that. Her skull alone also was recovered at Taylor Mountain in 1975, a little over 250 miles from where she was last seen. She disappeared after leaving a local tavern very close to where she lived. Now, guys, she did ask supposedly a male friend to take her home, but he was going the other way. I'm going to just go ahead and say this is always going to be a bad judgment call. You don't leave your friends, guys. If you can drive home, you need to drive them home.
We got some horrible friends that we're just coming across here.
They didn't have Uber back then, but hey, they had a cab. You could call friends. You could call somebody. Okay, so June 11th. Mind you, this is a little strange to me because I didn't catch this initially, but there's only a 10-day gap here. So Georgianne Hawkins, 18 years old. She was abducted from an alley behind her sorority house. She was only about 60 feet from the door. Now, Bundy either used a pair of fake crutches or a fake cast. I have read both. And he pretended to drop his belongings, and Georgianne agreed to help him load the objects into his car. Yeah.
Why would you do that, baby? He's very creative. We have a aspiring actor among our hands.
Very theatrical of Ted.
Yes.
So, Georgianne agreed to help him. Bundy's just showcasing his fake injury. When she peeked her head near into the car, probably noticing there was no passenger seat, Bundy struck her on the head with a crowbar hidden in the wheel well. He managed her limp body into the car and sped away. He drove a Volkswagen Beetle, and he was very familiar with how that worked, because throughout his entire span of crime, he would steal a couple vehicles, and I believe the majority of them were Volkswagen Beetles because he was so familiar with how they worked. But yes, he would take out the front passenger seat, lay it across the back seats, and he also knew how to remove the interior handle of the passenger side as well. Yeah.
That's awful. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised he, didn't use his trunk at all.
I don't know.
I didn't use the trunk.
I didn't read anything about the trunk, but yeah, you would think, because something like what I'm about to tell you could happen. At some point while Bundy was driving, Georgianne woke up. Now, she was very obviously delirious. She was going on about a school assignment. Bundy did confess that later, but regardless, Bundy pulled the car over and beat Georgianne to death. I'm thinking he wasn't prepared for all that. I don't want to sound insensitive by any means, but try to imagine if you just killed someone, then abducted them, and then they woke up. I'd freak out. That's definitely not a direct quote.
Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah. Her skeletal remains...
She's not even in her, right mind.
And this is more sad. Her skeletal remains were never actually found where Bundy claimed they'd be at Taylor Mountain. So her remains were never found.
There was no closure there.
No.
That's upsetting.
So July 14th, this is an almost got situation. She didn't get away from him. He didn't capture her. He almost got her though. Okay, so this is when we're gonna start kind of a new series here. These are gonna be the Lake Sammamish.
The Lake Sandwich.
The Lake Sandwich State Park. So Lake Sammamish State Park is roughly about 512 acres. So that's pretty massive. In this particular day, there were about 40 to 50,000 people enjoying their day.
It was a party.
Yeah.
It's a party. It's a party. It's a party. Hey.
So there was a lot of beach areas, lounging, lawn sports, boating.
Boating. I got you on that one.
Mary was lounging with her.
Wait, so you're telling me there's 40 to 50,000 people
In broad
at Lake
daylight.
Sandwich, and
Lake Sandwich in broad daylight. Nearly 50,000 people. Okay.
and nobody noticed?
Well, he did. You'll see. He didn't look alarming. Okay,
She said, "Be patient."
I know you want it. It's juicy, eh? Okay. So Mary was lounging with friends when she was approached by a handsome man, well-groomed, with his arm in a sling. So he was handsome.
He was ugly.
Look, at this time, he was handsome. He was tan. I think he was wearing, like... I just imagine him both, like, in a tennis get-up with, like, a sweater loosely tied around his shoulders.
I could see that.
Yeah. He looked very innocent, charming, and obviously what's he going to do? He's got a busted arm, broken arm.
Supposedly.
So Bundy politely asked Mary if she would help him move his sailboat.
Oh.
A whole ass sailboat. He's going to pick a pretty girl and he's going to say, "Hey, yo, can you help me move my sailboat?" So I'm sure Mary had reservations, but it was the 70s, he was handsome, and it was a very public area. So Mary followed him to his car, but she didn't see a boat.
Yeah, because there was no boat.
There was no boat. Where'd the boat? Bundy quickly made an excuse for this. He claimed the boat was just a short way up the street at his parents' house, and he asked if she would come with him to get it. Skirt.
Red flag.
Nope. So Mary replied with, and gosh bless you, Mary. Mary replied with she was sorry, but that she couldn't. She had plans to meet her parents for lunch, and she was already running late.
Good job.
Dude, I don't know if this was a true reason or an excuse, but either way, it saved her life.
Yeah, she saved herself. You did a good job.
Mm-hmm. And what's even weird, too, was she would report that he remained polite and was apologetic even when she said that she couldn't go with him. But, yeah.
I would have been like, yeah, I really gotta go. Sorry about that. Goodbye. And I would have fucking ran.
So, get this. Same day, our boy's in the mood again, and Bundy stopped at nothing to get a victim when he decided he really wanted one. July 14th, same day, Janice Ott was 23 years old. She was abducted from the beach at Lake Sammamish State Park in broad daylight. Bundy was getting angsty and impatient after Mary Osmer let him down. When he approached Janice, he actually introduced himself this time using his own name, Ted.
He was getting sloppy.
Yeah. Something else interesting, Janice had long blonde hair, not at all matching Bundy's usual type, which were younger co-eds with long hair.
Now he don't got no type.
Yeah, no.
Not when he's desperate.
When he's desperate, he gets sloppy, like you said, yes. Bundy used the very same ruse with Janice as Mary. He asked her for her help moving his sailboat. Janice went with Bundy to his car, but this time before Janice had any time to notice more than there being no boat, Bundy just struck her.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. He managed her unconscious body.
Out in broad daylight?
Yep, he managed her unconscious body right into the car and took her into the woods, and after restraining her, left her there alive. After this, still the very same day, same place, Ted went back to abduct another.
Oh.
So I think is this like a double homicide? A double homie? And after this, other killers would try to mimic as well. Now, Denise Naslin, 19 years old, was approached by Bundy outside one of the public restrooms at Lake Sammamish State Park. Not far from her friend, she was pretty close. She went with Bundy as he'd used the same ruse a third time.
Why would he change up his story?
Because it worked twice already.
Well, it didn't know.
No, it worked once, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it didn't work the first time. You would think like, oh, okay, maybe I shouldn't say a sailboat. Maybe I should say something different.
I feel like this is one of the prime times of
He could have been like, "Can you help me get my bags out of the car?"
Something.
Because I have the
whole
cast
boat.
on. Not, like a boat. Like, that's kind of just, like, extreme.
Maybe he thought if when they did come, their friends would allow a longer period of time for her to be missing because they figured it was a bigger task. I don't know.
I don't know either.
It is believed that Bundy brought Denise to the place in the woods where Janice was left alive, and the two women were terrorized together before Bundy killed one and then the other.
Yeah, to watch somebody have to
Within
go through
8
that
weeks,
while
but-
also suffering through that.
So after these two women went missing, people were going to the county police. There were witnesses who saw Bundy approach the girls. His face was known, his clothes were known, and his name, Ted, had been given, remember? His car was seen, the tan Volkswagen Beetle. So at this point, a facial sketch was released to the public, but I don't think it looked anything like him.
So speaking of that kind of reminded me. So during this time, he was actually dating Elizabeth.
Were they? Were they dating at this point?
Yeah, we call her Liz for short, but her name was Elizabeth, and that was the girlfriend that we had previously mentioned with Diane, that he would cheat on Liz with Diane. I remember her, like, saying in an interview, it was an ABC 2020 interview, and she mentioned that friends were kind of like, hey, like, they're saying they put out a sketch, kind of looks similar to Ted.
So tips were coming in, but by the time Ted's name was added to the suspect list, there were already 3,000 other names. One tip came from author Anne Rule. If you hadn't read any of her books, you need to. Her first book, The Stranger Beside Me, it's a retelling of her own friendship with Bundy at a time when they worked side by side at a suicide hotline call center. Do you find that odd? That he worked at a suicide call center? I find it odd. She would later say...
I think it made him more familiar with, if he was about to put himself in that position and do those things, he would know how to deal with it better. I don't know. I have absolutely no clue. Like, why he would want to do half of some of the things that he would want to do, but he also was trying to maintain the face of a normal person at the same time. So that just is probably what made him look better.
So, she provided a lot of factual details in her book, investigative details, and personal interviews after his arrest. I read a couple years ago, and I actually just gave it to Shay to read. It's a good one, y'all.
It is good.
It's a good one, y'all. So, aside from Anne Rule, here it is. His on and off again girlfriend at the time, Liz Kendall, she reported it after that first initial sketch came out. And then also one of Bundy's professors put a tip in regarding his odd behavior as a student, and said that he kind of looked like the sketch.
I remember reading something saying that he would, like, only attend, like, every so often. He didn't show up for classes a lot.
Really?
So that's probably the strange behavior that the professor's talking about.
Yeah, I wondered. I want to know what the odd behavior was, because the professor didn't just say he asked concerning questions, and that would have been my initial guess. So I have no idea, because I remember we had some odd
He
odd
probably
ones.
just asked funky in class.
We had a particular couple of odd few I can remember when I was in college. So Ted thought this would be a good time to relocate his whole self to Utah in August of 1974. He left his previous victims, now remember he was a revisitor, he left the crappy police sketch behind, and the Ted killings stopped in Washington.
He had to dip.
Yeah, he did ask his girlfriend Liz to come with him, but she said no thanks.
And that's when he did all of his
So
cheating.
they stayed together though? Yeah, they must have.
Yeah, they stayed together. He just moved away, and he started murdering in another area. Mm-hmm. He had to get away, clear his slate. And also, I'm pretty sure she, like, couldn't move away because she had a daughter named Molly. And that would have been a lot to, like, remove her from and, like, throw her in a different area as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Even if they were having, regardless of the rocky relationship, regardless of any suspicions that she had, just if you've got a child in a city and they're that young, it's really hard to uproot them, take them somewhere else.
She definitely had to be suspicious, too. So it's probably nice for her to get a little bit of space away from him.
This was the time where she put that tip in. His name was initially put into the tip pool, but she was a part of...
Did you know that they ignored her a couple of times when she first put in that, hey, you kind of need to look into Ted. You need to look into Ted.
Well, I think I had said, too, by the time his name was added to the list, there was also 3,000 other suspects' names that had been given and put on that list. So I think the police were just...
Had so much...
Yeah, they had so much coming in. How do they follow 3,000 leads?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? With the pressure of us and the media.
3,000 people. Well, the drawing was very generic.
Yeah.
It just looked like a basic
But
man. I
still,
don't think it showed any
that's
detail.
a lot of names for them to look backgrounds on to just clarify if
Right.
they're relevant or not. You know what I mean?
But they dismissed him, and they dismissed her tips just way too nonchalantly. But I can understand where the confusion would be at. You gave me a different perspective on that. Thank you.
You're welcome. So October 2nd, Nancy Wilcox. Now, guys, I'm going to go ahead and throw this in here. She is the youngest so far. She was 16 years old. She disappeared in, I know, she's just a baby. And he gets younger, guys, so just keep that in mind. Now, she disappeared in Holiday, Utah. The police didn't make this connection on their own. Bundy claimed her body. He claimed it was buried near Capitol Reef National Park, roughly 200 miles south of Salt Lake City, but her remains were never found.
Oh.
Mm-mm.
It's always sad. I know it doesn't, finding their remains doesn't bring them back, but it's, like I said, it's a closure thing.
Yeah, it gives you a peace. Some people, they'll tell you there never is closure.
It's just how you lay your loved one to rest.
Yeah.
And you can actually,
well, you want to know
yourself
that
is at peace
you
as well,
want to be
too.
in repossession of their remains. You know what I mean? You want to bury them or cremate them. You want to know that you know where they're at, they're safe, and whatever they were going through was finished. October 18th, same month. Mind you, again, this one right here. So we went from October 2nd to the 18th. Melissa Ann Smith, 17 years old, only a year older. She vanished from Midvale, Utah after leaving a diner and headed for home, and she never made it. One witness later claimed she had heard a single scream that night. Her body was found 9 days later on a hillside in Summit Park. She was the police chief's daughter.
Oh.
Yeah.
He would not, no.
He's not going to let that
one
go.
Yeah.
Nope. And she had been, here's a little warning, she had been raped, sodomized, and strangled.
You know, the chief's about to...
He's not going to let that go.
Yeah, he's going to really get into that as his baby girl.
He's not going to let that go.
Which this is good, though, because I feel like in some of these other cases, they've just let it go so easily. So now at least it's starting to get people's attention.
At least. So we're going to jump forward again. Is this the same? It is October 31st. His third in a single month of October.
Halloween.
Laura Ann Aim, he's getting younger, 17 years old. She disappeared from Leahy, Utah. Her body was discovered by hikers on a riverbank of American Fork Canyon about a month later on Thanksgiving Day.
On possibly Ted and I's birthday. Because Ted was born November 24th and I was born November 24th. And sometimes our birthday falls on Thanksgiving.
I never thought of that. My grandmother's birthday also, it's the 28th, so has fallen on Thanksgiving before.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe he planned it. I never considered that.
I don't know if he planned it, but...
I don't know. I feel like he would consider that a good birthday gift. Unless he was paranoid at this point. I don't know how paranoid he was. Okay, so November 8th, guys, we're going to talk about Carol DeRanch. And she is very important. Remember how I mentioned at the very beginning of the episode, she is going to be crucial. She testifies against Ted. So not only does she escape Ted Bundy, he has her in his grip, and she escapes. And she becomes crucial in the testimony.
Right.
As a state's witness against Ted Bundy. Right.
She gave a lot of help. She gave them exactly what they needed for the case.
Without her, the case could have gone a whole different direction. So November 8th, Carol DeRanch. She was only 18 years old. Bundy stalked and attempted to abduct Carol DeRanch from the Fashion Place Mall.
Fashion Place Mall.
This is the 70s. The Fashion Place Mall.
What a basic name for a mall.
In Murray, Utah. He approached her on her way out of the store, claiming to be a police officer by the name of Officer Roseland. Now, he read her license plate number. He had written it down to confirm it was her car. He told her he'd caught someone trying to break into it and that she needed to first come with him to her car to see if anything had been taken. So she did. At the time, she drove a Camaro. She was really proud of this Camaro. In an interview,
I would be proud of a Camaro in that time.
In an interview I watched, she really loved that Camaro. So she went with Officer Roseland to the Camaro. She looked inside and told him it didn't appear anything had been taken or even disturbed at all. He then asked her to come down to the station with him to fill out a police report just to be safe. He offered to drive.
Okay, because why would you need to file a police report if nothing appeared to be damaged or stolen?
Yeah. So at this point, Carol became uncomfortable enough to ask to see some identification. Now, this dude, he produced a police badge. From where, I have no idea.
I would have said he would have killed the cop, but he only kills women. That's like his main target. So
Yeah.
he probably just stole it.
So she stowed her anxieties and agreed to go with him under the assumption that he was an officer. So when they got to Bundy's car, she paused again. He was driving a Volkswagen Bug. He quickly told her that they're not. He quickly told her they were working. He quickly told her he was working undercover.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say like a bug,
Okay.
like a bug would be an undercover car.
But she got in the car.
Undercover car.
She did. She did get in the car. He had He had produced a police badge. He knew her license plate number.
Everything's failing right now.
The light's trying to fall on me. So she got in. She got in the car. As they were driving, she realizes that they're not driving to the police station, and she becomes visibly uncomfortable and very obviously onto it.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So Bundy pulled over and tried to handcuff her to restrain her, but Carol fought him off, and in his efforts, he accidentally put both cuffs around the same wrist.
Dumbass boy.
Yep. She jumped out of the parked car and freaking ran. Bundy did not chase her, and Carol went straight to the freaking police.
Good job.
Yes. She called him out at every opportunity that she thought she should. That takes balls to do. Especially to Ted Bundy, who was known to be very easygoing with manipulation and coercing.
I would be haunted for the rest of my life after that situation, though.
But
I'd be afraid everyone was trying to nab me.
oh gosh, I can't imagine. Remember how he got that first time he didn't get that victim?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so he was jonesing again.
He going back.
He was jonesing. People saw him pacing in the parking lot. He appeared anxious and impatient. Now, this was at the where Deborah, our next victim, Deborah Jean Kent, 17 years old. So she vanished after leaving a school play in Bountiful, Utah. So Bundy was actually seen pacing in the parking lot of the school. He appeared anxious and impatient, it was reported.
My boy was freaking out.
He was freaking out. Her body wouldn't be found until 2015, but in the parking lot where Deborah went missing was the handcuff key to cuffs Carol Durant had on her when she went to the police.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's how those two were linked. Even though her remains were not found until 2015,
Wow.
they were immediately linked because of that handcuff key that was found.
And this was in the year of...
We're still in 1974. We're going to get in 1974.
And they didn't find out until 2015?
Mm-mm.
I feel like that's like a really long time.
It is. It's a horribly long time. So later, after Bundy is arrested, they find the playbill from the school play where Deborah was last seen among his belongings. So he took a little trophy, a little memento.
Good for them to find that, though.
Yeah.
Not for him to take it and do that.
I was like, wait, what? So, very minimal skeletal remains were found. One patella bone. I think that's a part of the knee, but I could be wrong.
Patella bone.
Yeah. In 2015, the remains were positively identified by DNA as Deborah's. So, guys, around this time, Bundy dropped out of the University of Utah Law and drove out to Colorado about 9 months after Carol Durant had gotten away. We're jumping into a new series here, guys. He's in Colorado now.
Okay, so we had the Mountain series, the Sandwich series, and now we're moving on to...
Yeah, now we're in Colorado, and we're getting into the victims and survivors of 1975. So January 12th of 1975, Karen Eileen Campbell, 23 years old, she disappeared from a hotel hallway while on vacation with her fiancé and his 2 daughters in Snowmass, Colorado. That's close to Aspen.
That's heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm. She had been a nurse from Michigan. Her body was discovered 36 days later, nude on a dirt road near the hotel, and she had been confirmed raped.
Oh.
March 15th, Julie Cunningham, 26 years old. Julie was a part-time ski instructor, and she disappeared on the way to meet a roommate at a tavern in Vail, Colorado. According to Bundy, her body was buried near Rifle, 90 miles west of Vail, but her remains were never found. April 6th, Denise Lynn Oliverson, 25 years old. She was abducted while cycling to her parents' house in Grand Junction, Colorado, after having an argument with her husband.
Oh, that's even worse, too. They left on bad terms.
Yeah, she never made it. According to Bundy, her body was thrown into the Colorado River 5 miles west of Grand Junction, where her bike and sandals were found, but her body has never been found. So I think in the end times, closer to Ted's execution, he was just throwing out, I think he was just sending the police on wild goose chases, to be honest. He was trying to buy time. I don't think his memory could recall every disposal.
That, I mean, unless he was really that crazy, or he, like, jotted down his victims.
He did have an IQ of 136, so I'm sure he could retain quite a bit of information, but however, he did have, I mean, this is a long list of victims.
Right, that's a lot to remember.
It is, it really is. So May 6th, Lynette Dawn Culver, she was 12 years old.
Oh, no.
She was a baby. She was abducted from Alameda Junior High School in Pocatello, Idaho. According to Bundy, her body was thrown into the Snake River, but was never found either.
Come on, man.
June 28th, Susan Curtis, 15 years old, disappeared during a youth conference in Brigham Young University. According to Bundy, her body had been discarded near Price, Utah, roughly 75 miles southeast of Provo, but never found. How can he give such specific 75 miles, go 75 miles southeast of Provo? And that's exactly where she's at.
That's just an estimate that the people gave.
Yeah, but it's going to be
based on what he
accurate enough
said.
for them to find it.
That's what I'm saying. It just gets a little rocky to actually know if, you know what I'm saying, because their bodies were actually never found. So he was definitely just blowing smoke up their ass, and they were just picking with what sounded really good to tell the public. Because I feel like in certain things, if you don't actually know the answer to it, and you present that to the public, I think that just makes you look like you don't know what you're doing, and they don't want to look like they don't know what they're doing, or not know what they're talking about.
That's true. That's true. Alright guys, so this is a big date, August 16th of 1975. Bundy was arrested by Utah Highway Patrol Officer Bob Hayward.
Thanks, Bob.
Major shout out to Bob. Go friggin' Bob. In a suburb of Salt Lake City, Hayward observed Bundy cruising a residential area in his Volkswagen Beetle in the early AM hours. When Officer Hayward attempted to pull him over for suspicious activity, it kind of looked like he was lurking or stalking something.
Well, wasn't it really, really late at night?
It was the early AM hours. He didn't recognize his car. It was a very small town. From my understanding, this small suburb was near Salt Lake City was a very small suburb. So when Officer Hayward attempted to pull him over for suspicious activity, he fled at a high speed and a short car chase ensued, but Bundy did eventually pull over. Now, like I said, it was a fairly small town and neither Bundy nor his car were recognized by Officer Hayward. He first noticed Bundy was dressed in all black. I have here kind of sus. It is kind of sus.
I mean, I wear all black.
I know, but...
A lot, and am I sus to you?
No, I guess not.
Is there something? I just like dark colors.
There's just something about imagining Ted Bundy in all black that looks really sus. So, Officer Hayward then noticed that the Volkswagen front passenger seat had been removed and placed across the rear seats, and the passenger side interior handle was missing.
So, black clothes, red flag. No passenger seat, red flag.
No passenger handle, interior handle, red flag.
Yeah.
So he asked him, he was like, what are you doing? Where are you going? Who are you? Bundy told him he was in town to see a movie. Officer Hayward told Bundy he had probable cause to search the car, and when Officer Hayward did, he found a ski mask, a second mask made from women's pantyhose, a crowbar, handcuffs, trash bags, a spool of rope, an ice pick, and other items. So, I wonder if the placement of the items made it appear as like a kill kit. Bundy explained that the ski mask was for skiing, he'd found the handcuffs in a dumpster, and the rest were common household items. Yeah, not in collaboration, buddy. So I
definitely don't have those items in my car.
No. And I did insert a little picture here of the items that were taken from Bundy at this time that he was arrested. And I also see a flashlight included in the photograph and an egg carton. Now, the egg carton's not open. You can't see what's inside of it. It's just an egg carton. I'm not sure why it's photographed. I'm not sure what its intended use was.
He places eyeballs in there.
No. Oh, man, girl. Wait till we get into Ed Gein. This is where... Oh.
He's eyeball guy that we were talking about the other day. He's eyeball guy.
No. Ed Gein was the one with the belt.
With a belt. Oh, ew. Yes, ew. No, yes. And I thought that it might be skin, but you said that it was a belt of nipples.
Yes, guys. We're going to get into Ed Gein. Don't worry. If you love Ed Gein, we're going to get into him. He was the muse for a lot of different literature. What comes to mind specifically was Silence of the Lambs, the Buffalo Bill. I don't know where I was going with that. We can cut that out.
Okay.
All right, so he was arrested in Utah, obviously. At this point, the police had a substantial amount of girls missing from local areas, and they also had Carol DeRonch, remember, who got away from Bundy when he tried to abduct her from the Fashion Place Mall.
So we're getting closer to literally busting his ass.
Yeah, so they put together a lineup, and Carol picked him out immediately. Even though he'd very obviously tried to disguise himself, he cut his hair, he had it parted the other way. And this part's just really funny, but he had his britches hiked up to his freaking chin. He looks goofy in the lineup photo.
High waters.
Yeah, he looked really goofy.
Gooful.
He looked really goofy.
He looked really gooful.
But his facial expression and his eyes are dead set forward in like this really concentrated way. It's pretty scary. So at this point, police interviewed Liz. Now, I watched an interview where Liz said she never witnessed any behavior that would lead her to believe Bundy was a violent man. But remember, she did call the tip line in to report after the first police sketch came out. And later, after being questioned by the police, she would confess he had some strange things around when they were dating.
But she also mentions too, when she talks in interviews, that... Because I know, obviously, when it came down to the time that they were really cracking down on him, she obviously was suspicious. But she mentioned beforehand never, like, being suspicious of him at all.
No.
Other than the household items. That's, like, the only thing she mentions. But she would say that he was, like, a normal family guy, charming man. The reason why she would be so enticed to Ted is because she just got out of a marriage. She had a daughter that she needed to raise and needed help with. And as charming as he was, he charmed her pants off and charmed his way into her heart.
That sucks. That sucks, man, because she would later confess that he did have strange items around the house when they were dating. Like, for example, he had a hatchet he regularly kept under the front seat of his car. She didn't think anything of it at the time, but after him being, a very obvious suspect, he also kept crutches at their apartment that he had never needed as far as she knew. And he had plaster that could be used to make fake casts with.
That's weird.
Yeah.
That's so weird. And I just, like, if that were my boyfriend and he was doing weird-ass shit like that, I wouldn't just let it go. I think, like, I don't know if I'm just an overthinker or, like, a detective. Because when something's suspicious to me, like, I gotta find out. Like, I'm too curious for that. Like, you just gonna tell me you just have that to have that? Absolutely not. Like, I'm finna find out about it.
Why do we have crutches in the house?
That's what I'm saying.
My thing is I keep a clean house. If there's no need for that to be there and it's not decor, then what's it doing there? Another revealing but shocking detail that she was able to provide was the night of the Lake Sammamish abductions. Bundy had dinner reservations with Liz that same evening, and she distinctly remembers he finished off 2 hamburgers like he hadn't eaten in days.
Carnivore.
He was just absolutely ravenous after.
He was famished.
Ugh.
He'd been busy. No time to eat.
He doesn't
How
deserve
could you eat, though?
Well, he had no freaking guilt, no remorse.
I mean, he
was hungry.
He's comfortable enough to bust a nut, so I mean, I guess I could see him still being able to, like, eat food while doing nasty things.
Yeah, why would Liz look like... I mean, look, why would...
Like, I would lose my appetite killing people, but...
So Bundy was charged for the attempted abduction and sent to Utah State Prison. But he posted bail and was released. Why was there even a bond set for aggravated kidnapping. So Bundy went back to Washington, but he knew the police were, he knew he was being watched by the police. He did return to Utah to face the charge, I think because he couldn't have gotten away from it if he tried. And this is when he decided to first act as his own attorney.
Well, he's an idiot for doing that.
That's such a bad idea.
Because you would need, I would think that there would be several lawyers on your case for such big charges.
Yeah,
I would want to make sure that somebody else from another angle would be able to see and help me out from a different view.
This case would be publicized. So when he finally reached jury trial, it was publicized. Like, there were reporters filming from within the courtroom. It was worth that much. If it was worth that much, I just need to know why was he given a bond? I can't think of any way why he should have deserved a bond. But now, remember, he dropped out of law school. He didn't get a degree. He didn't pass the bar.
Mm-hmm. He didn't even fully graduate law school. Why does he think that makes him, like, how is he even qualified?
He's not. He didn't pass the bar. He's never been in court before. So even if he had passed the bar and become an attorney, this would be his first case, and he'd still be in deep doo-doo. On March 6, 1976, Bundy was found guilty of the aggravated kidnapping of Carol Durange and sentenced. At this time, the court required him to have a 90-day psychological evaluation to determine if he was capable of great violence or murder. The doctor at the time assigned was Dr. Carlisle, and he concluded that yes, Bundy did have the potential to be very violent, even quite possibly murderous.
Mm-hmm.
He also commentated on Bundy's extraordinary manipulative abilities.
Dr. Carlisle. That reminds me of Carlisle from Twilight.
Yeah, I thought of that too. And he was a doctor too, yeah. Now, mind you, forensic specialists could compare hair and other fibers at the time. You know, under a microscope, they could look at that. But DNA testing was not available yet. So they couldn't test the DNA of the hairs.
They were not
they
that
received.
advanced during that time.
Not yet.
I can imagine just how easy this would have been if they were advanced.
Oh, they could just test those hairs.
Right.
Against the victims, yeah. So authorities were also granted a warrant to search his apartment. There they found a map with an X over the Colorado resort where Karen Eileen Campbell was staying with her fiancé and his 2 daughters when she went missing. Mm-hmm. Remember, she was the nurse from Michigan. They also found a gas receipt linking him to the area of Karen's disappearance, and on the very same day. They also found the playbook from the theater play where Deborah Jean Kent was last seen. So remember when he was pacing in the parking lot?
He was freaking out?
Yeah, jonesing.
Breakdown?
Now, what the police did not find at this time was Bundy's personal collection of Polaroids he had secured in a lockbox.
Oh, I didn't know my dude took pictures.
I'm sure these photos would have been crucial evidence in court, and I can only imagine.
I really there's 2 things I genuinely have learned, because I did do a lot of research on Ted, but number 1, I didn't know that he played with the bodies days after he initially first murdered them, and I did not know that he took pictures of what he did.
Yeah, so I imagine amongst his Polaroids were probably photos of the living and the dead, and both must have been.
My mind can only
It's horrifying.
travel
It's horrifying.
to what he would take pictures
Absolutely
of.
horrifying, but it would have been crucial evidence, and it's really unfortunate they didn't find it. In 1976, he was extradited from Utah to Colorado, now this time for the murder of Karen Eileen Campbell. Once in Colorado, Bundy again decided to act as his own attorney, only this time he was charged with murder. You really have to be very, very prideful, very...
I'm surprised that would even be allowed at such an extreme like that they would just allow you to... No.
Yeah.
You might as well just, sentence him now.
And what's worse is, being that Bundy was representing himself, he asked the court for certain privileges. My mind immediately just says no. Nope, it's a murder charge. And he's not actually an attorney. As we said, he didn't graduate, didn't pass the bar. What's frustrating is after sentencing, and for 10 years thereafter, he would file appeals. One appeal being on the grounds that he had improper representation.
Boy, you were the improper representation. What do you mean?
Exactly. Seriously, he did. He filed an appeal for improper representation being himself. Now, one privilege granted was he was not handcuffed or otherwise restrained during trial.
That's right. They even let him, he was allowed to dress in like a nice little suit and tie as well too. He
Well,
wasn't in his normal
He
like.
was an attorney. What do you mean?
He was not no good attorney. What? I see that as not fair because if it were anybody else, they would not.
No.
Have their ass do that.
No. Another privilege, he had access to the law library on the second floor for research.
Which was a mistake on they dumbass.
Yes. Now, it is common for attorneys upon, during recess, breaks, lunch, whatever, to go up to that law library and refresh on their research, okay? For example, if there's a case of similar nature, they're going to want to find that. They're going to, want to be able to compare and say, well, in this case, blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, it's pretty common for them to be up there in the law library. But on June 7th, 1977, the court called for a recess. Bundy asked the officers charged with keeping watch over him if he could go up to the second floor law library to do some research during the recess. He was escorted to the law library, but otherwise left alone to conduct his research.
Mistake on they dumbass.
This is when Bundy escaped through the open second floor window. This was more than a 25-foot drop, guys. He hit the ground running and didn't look back. Now, he did hurt his ankle. He didn't break anything, but he did hurt his foot and ankle. So he had to have. Now, Bundy spent 6 days in the Aspen, Colorado wilderness. Do you remember we talked about this in the first episode where I said by the time he was recaptured 6 days later, he looked like he had spent some time with Bigfoot?
Yeah.
So our boy Bundy, he emerged. By the time he emerged, he had lost a significant amount of weight because he had to steal to eat. He stole clothes to stay warm. And this was all while trying to maintain a low profile.
Right.
So when he did emerge, he stole a car, but he was so far gone mentally that he was pulled over under suspicion of drunk driving. Now, this time around, Colorado authorities were supposedly taking Bundy's security much more seriously after he'd been recaptured. But Bundy was already planning his next escape.
Can you just chill out for a second?
No, he has no chill. He has no chill.
You had your time, baby. You shined, and now you getting put away. Right, just sit your ass down.
So the cell that Bundy stayed in had a light fixture in the ceiling above his bed, and during the time Bundy realized he could remove the fixture as it was not welded the way it was supposed to be to prevent escape. Now the hole was only about a foot wide. I have no idea how he managed to squeeze his shoulders together enough to squeeze through. Bundy lost roughly 30 pounds to fit through this hole. Oh, that's how.
Determined.
He would go up through the hole and explore before he ever made an actual attempt to escape. And other prisoners even complained to the staff about hearing loud noises in the ceiling at night, but they were ignored.
But you didn't do anything about it.
They were ignored. So on New Year's Eve of 1977, Bundy made his second great escape. He told the staff he was not feeling well, and they let him stay in his cell to sleep. I think that was through dinner. Now, he knew the security would be less because of the holiday. Now, Bundy covered a bunch of books with his blanket to make it look like he was sleeping under it. He jumped up through the hole and crawled through the rafters, and he came out of the head jailer's office.
Whoa. Imagine if the jailer was in the office at the time.
Yeah, he came out through the jailer's closet, he changed into normal civilian clothes, and walked out the front door of the prison. And his absence obviously wouldn't be noticed until the following day. It was at this time that Bundy was added to the FBI's most wanted list.
He spent 2 months, too, during this time.
We are going to cover the infamous Chi Omega murders.
Sorority sisters.
Yes, in Florida. We're also going to cover his very last murder of Kimberly Diane Leach and his death sentence. So, let's get into it. It was January of 1978. Florida State University students were just getting back to campus after the holiday break. So he made his way to Florida. His mistake. He can't handle it down here.
Everyone moves to Florida. Why y'all be moving to Florida?
Well, I think he just wanted to stay away from the states that he had previously...
I know.
And Florida seemed like the farthest
just
away.
choosing to come down here to
No,
Florida.
we're full. Bundy later said that he initially intended to just settle down in Florida, find a job, and refrain from any further criminal activity, knowing he could probably stay undetected in Florida permanently as long as he didn't attract attention. But the problem was he couldn't produce any actual proof of identification for any employment opportunity. I don't think this would have worked anyways. I 100% believe that he wouldn't have been able to refrain from his impulses.
I think he's just crazy to think that he can get along with the idea of, like, taking a fake identity.
The fact, he entertained
being
the
a
idea.
very wanted man at the time.
In Florida. Like, you stay from the States, bro. Come on now. So, instead, he moved into a boarding house close to campus, claiming to be a grad student by the name of Chris Hagen. He was 31 at the time. He was handsome still. He kind of passed. I mean, he claimed to be a grad student. He passed. And he actually attended campus lectures, and some teachers actually thought him a student.
That's so weird.
I would do it.
Weird.
I'd do it. Maybe that's the nerd in me, but I'd be like, free education?
I'd stay hidden. If I was wanted, I would stay.
Ballsy, man. So, alright, here we go. It was late at the Chi Omega sorority house, almost midnight. Bundy scoped the building out, and as soon as all looked dark and safe, he grabbed either a log or heavy stick and approached the unlocked door at the stairs at the back of the house.
What a great selection.
Interesting, though, that he just always, sometimes he has a weapon on him, and sometimes he just grabs one on his way in. After entering, it was the room of Margaret Bowman that was closest. And he released absolute hell on these young women. And the whole attack only lasted about 15-20 minutes.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how did none of the girls that weren't being attacked at the time, how did they not hear the commotion that was going on?
All right, so let's start with Margaret Bowman. Margaret Elizabeth Bowman, 21 years old. She was bludgeoned and then she was strangled to death with her own nylon pantyhose. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of an extra warning on this one, okay? He used such brute force that her neck was nearly broken, and he left burn marks from trying to rip her panties off. Next was Lisa Levy, 20 years old. Now, her room was directly across from Margaret's. She was bludgeoned and then strangled manually and sexually assaulted. When police arrived, she was alive, but a very weak pulse was detected, and she died shortly after before reaching the hospital. She had a broken collarbone. Her face was smashed. Here's another warning, you guys. Her nipple was nearly torn off. Bundy had bitten and nearly torn her nipple off. Now, initially, yes.
That's some rough foreplay.
That's bad. Initially, cops actually thought that a gun was involved. And that because the nipple was almost entirely dislocated from the body, that it was a gunshot wound.
To her tit.
As opposed to his
gun wound
teeth.
to her tit, and it just blew the nipple off.
Yep.
I'm so sorry. I will say that I do have a really dark sense of humor. That
So, I mean, I do too,
is a little funny.
Oof. So, he raped and sodomized her with a hairspray bottle. He also left a bite mark, a very prominent bite mark, on her buttock. On her butt cheek. Yeah.
Call out a butt munch.
Oh my god, she did not! So, guys, this bite mark is important. As horrible as this is, it's important because it would become crucial evidence. Bundy had a very particular bite mark. He had really crooked teeth, not in the kind of way that was really obvious when he smiled, but a dental mold.
So his teeth aligned up on the butt.
But a dental mold could hold up in court, for sure. Our next victim, you guys, now she's a survivor.
He ate the booty.
I'm done. I'm done. It's my own house. Can I get an Uber out of here? We're going to get into Kathy Kleiner. Now, she was the next victim. She is a survivor. She was 21 years old. This account is interesting to hear because all these years later, Kathy remembers hearing her and her roommate Karen's door open that night. So she heard him come in. Kathy was just starting and waking up from the noise when Bundy just started raining blow after blow down on her. She recalls feeling pins and needles and then numb. Yeah, at least she didn't feel pain. When Bundy heard Karen starting to stir in the bed across the small room, he quickly moved and started mercilessly beating Karen as well. Now, Kathy would be found upright in her bed after this, multiple lacerations to her face and head, and her jaw was broken in several places. Now, Karen Chandler, also 21 years old, that shared the room with Kathy, she has no memory of the attack whatsoever. But Karen was bludgeoned as she slept, and now it was around this time that another one of their sorority sisters was pulling up in the driveway. I think she was getting home from a late date. and the headlights caused Bundy to panic. They flashed through the room.
Good. That was probably a good thing.
Yeah, it is.
Probably would have killed more.
Well, it is, because
come home.
he panicked and he fled after the attack on Karen. So afterwards, though, she would be found stumbling in the hallway, delirious, with a fractured skull, a broken jaw, and multiple teeth were missing from the attack.
For a pretty little sorority girl, that was probably crushing, not having no teeth.
Well, she looks great now, I have to say. I've seen her now. But still, can you imagine? She was consciously fumbling around. So police were called to the Kyle Mega house when neighbors heard the girl screaming. Karen and Kathy were taken to the hospital. Now, while police were at the Kyle Mega house, a dispatch call came in concerning loud noises a couple of blocks away. This is where we're going to talk about Cheryl Thomas. She was also 21 years old, a student. She lived about 8 blocks from the Kyle Mega house. So after Bundy saw the headlights from the window of Kathy and Karen's room, he fled, covered in blood, and with the murder weapon still in hand, but he wasn't done. At this point...
So you're telling me someone just came home, and he's going to get out of this, he's going to clear the scene, but he's going to go off and he's going to do more after.
Yeah.
Have you not done enough in a night?
No, I honestly think that his intentions were to get as many women in that house as he could. And that disruption, he wasn't done. He just wasn't done. I think he wanted to go out with a bang. Because also, too, he couldn't pay his bills. He couldn't get a job. He couldn't pay his bills. He had to pay rent where he was staying.
And killing people was helping with that problem.
No. No. I mean, it really didn't. I mean, sure, it satiated his whatever, but...
Well, he was already on his final chart. He's going to go anyway, so I guess.
Yeah, I think he was going out with a bang.
No, I don't just guess. Absolute. What?
I think he still would have gotten away with it, could he? But... So, at this point...
We're so dry.
Bundy had either already stolen or did steal, at this moment, a white van, property of Florida State University. And he broke into Cheryl Thomas's apartment. I think it was a duplex. So she shared I think it would probably be 1 bedroom wall with a direct neighbor. He broke into Cheryl Thomas's apartment, and she too was bludgeoned as she slept. Now, several of her neighbors were awoken from the noise of the beating. Okay. She survived, but she too had a broken jaw, multiple skull fractures, and a dislocated shoulder. Lastly, guys, Bundy masturbated on her bed and then left. So the Kyle Mega house attacks, including Cheryl Thomas, made national news. But local authorities were still completely stumped. The girls could not remember anything about their attacker, and they couldn't think of anyone who would want to hurt any of them.
Right, because he's a random-ass man.
So no one local had any idea who could have done this. Police were canvassing, questioning, and they opened a tip line. Also, a $10,000 reward for any information was posted. Police were at the scene and collecting evidence for about a week. We're going to talk about Ted Bundy's final and last murder. This was February 9th, about a month later from the Kyle Mega attacks. Kimberly Diane Leach was 12 years old.
So that's another
baby. Bundy abducted Kimberly from her middle school in Lake City, Florida, roughly 200 miles from Tallahassee, where the Kyle Mega house stands. This will be the last victim before his permanent incarceration. Kimberly was called from class to retrieve her purse that she had left in her homeroom, her prior class. She took the long way around to the gym, crossing the front of the school building. This is where witnesses stated they saw Kimberly being led away to a white van by a man that was absolutely furious. They had assumed it was her father. This is why now, if I go to pick up my child from school, I have to produce valid ID before I can even get in the front door of the office. But that was not how it was then. Her mummified remains were found near Swanee River State Park, 43 miles west of Lake City, in a barn near a pig pen. She had had her throat slit. So this is the first time I'm aware of him slitting one's throat. And also, I've read some places where she was just in a pig pen.
I don't really think there was any reason why he would slit her throat.
No,
Something he had done before.
I think he was an absolute mess. February 15th, so 5 days later, finding employment was obviously off the table. He couldn't pay his rent, and he was paranoid.
He sound like me. Can't pay his rent.
So he was stopped by a Pensacola police officer around 1 a.m. while driving the white van from the Florida State University campus. So when the officer ran his plate, it came back as stolen. The officer attempted to arrest Bundy, but Bundy kicked the officer's feet out from under him in the process of being handcuffed and took off.
Aha, he finally killed a cop. Because remember in the beginning, I was talking about, like, oh, when he got the badge, I was like, he probably killed a cop to get the badge. Here's his cop kill.
Actually, the officer caught up with him and tackled him.
Oh. Damn, so he didn't get the kill. No.
Bundy gave a fake name of a well-known athlete at Florida State University who did kind of look like Ted, but police eventually figured out that they had Ted Bundy. And Bundy called Liz around this time, and all he told her was that the media was going to be bad when it broke out.
So we're going to trial.
We, the jury, at trial, crucial testimony came from Chi Omega sorority members, one of them being Nita Neary. She saw him leaving the house still holding the murder weapon. Incriminating physical evidence included impressions of the bite wounds Bundy had inflicted on Lisa Levy's left buttock.
Butt cheeks.
Which forensic odontologist matched to castings of Bundy's teeth. Bundy was found guilty of the murders of Margaret Bowman and Lisa Levy, the attempted murder of Kathy Kleiner, Karen Chandler, and Cheryl Thomas.
He played.
The judge sentenced Bundy to his very first death sentence for the murder charges.
Down you go.
He would die via electrocution. 6 months later, a second trial took place in Orlando for the abduction and murder of Kimberly Leach. This is where we're going to talk a little bit about... Now remember, mind you, this was televised, okay? And we're in the penalty phase of the Kimberly Leach trial. So the very, very tail end of the tail end.
The tail end of the tail end. The end.
Bundy, at this time, had groupies. The courtroom was full. The courtroom gallery was full of female on-viewers that were just absolutely obsessed with Ted and believed in his innocence.
That's great.
Yep.
We love women supporting the killings of other women.
Guys.
I mean, that's basically that's what you...
Honestly, I don't know a better way to broadcast your daddy issues. I'm just saying.
Like, I'm not even gonna say that. But
Anywho. So, during the penalty phase of the Leach trial, Bundy took advantage of a very obscure Florida law at the time, providing that a marriage declaration in court in the presence of a judge constituted a legal marriage. And at this time, he was questioning Carol Boone. We haven't talked much about her. You want to tell them a little bit about Carol Boone?
Oh, I'd love to.
How we ended up here with her?
Carol Boone. Now, I support all of my ladies that are in love, and when you pick the right person to be in love with. This woman is absolutely absurd crazy. She flip-flopped her whole life to move to Florida to support Ted through all of his trials, bringing her son with her from a previous marriage, and going on further so to saying yes and I do to marrying him, given the fact that he is, like, being charged with, like, more than one murder, and that just, like, boggles my mind. Because how desperate was Diane? Diane is a desperate hoe.
She had testified on his behalf during both trials and was again testifying on his behalf as a character witness whenever he made this marriage proposal. And the court was just astounded. He asked her to marry him, she accepted, and Bundy declared to the court that they were now legally married. Now, they did produce a child from this marriage. Ask me how.
Sorcery.
He bribed the guards to give them intimate time alone.
Yeah, I definitely could see that.
So probably in the commissary, somewhere there, they were getting it on. Okay.
And that's just like, in what mind is that flattering the first time? Because, like, if you think about it, they only had a relationship while he was incarcerated. They never actually got to go on dates and do normal things. So the first time you have sex with this man, it's going to be
in jail.
In prison.
Yeah. Now, I think how they initially met was they had worked together previously while he was working on that Republican campaign we talked about earlier.
They did.
Yeah, they worked in the same office together for a short time, and I think she developed a crush around that time, but irregardless. So, shortly after the conclusion of Kimberly Leach's trial began, I'm sorry. Shortly after the conclusion of Kimberly Leach's trial began a long appeals process, and he did manage 3 stays of execution. Bundy was known to withhold information to gain something he wanted. He was in no hurry to confess, but Bundy did not want to die. So instead of saying, I did this, he would say, well, I suppose the killer did this. When his execution date was like right around the corner, he started calling different county sheriff offices, offering information in exchange for more time. But people were exhausted with Bundy at this point. The families of the victims were exactly like you said. They were able to guess what had happened to their daughters. No one wanted to hear from Bundy anymore.
Right, they had enough people.
They were done. They were done. The morning of Bundy's execution, there were hundreds of people, remember? Essentially tailgating. I would have been one of them. The signs, the shirts, burn Bundy, burn. They were chanting and holding signs, and Bundy was executed and pronounced dead at 7:16 a.m., January 24th of 1989. Now, this is where we end. However, I do want to just discuss a little bit of the psychology. I did take a look at Bundy's brain scans. So, Ted Bundy had no head injuries. Now, that's something that I have noticed in a lot of serial killers' back history, their early childhood. There usually are a report of 1 or 2 or more head injuries. However, in this case, there were none reported in his early childhood. However, the orbital cortex of the brain, so this is the part of the brain that controls impulsions and emotional responses. Now, guys, I do know Bundy's last meal for anyone who is interested. I don't know why I always get so interested in what their last meals are. Nowadays, you have to keep it under $20, whatever your last meal is, but back then you didn't. So if you're interested in knowing what Ted Bundy's last meal was, email us and let us know.
I find it crazy that they would even get the opportunity to pick their last meal. Are they even deserving enough to be able to do that?
I don't know why either.
I don't really think so. I think that we should just get them on out.
But still, I do find last meals interesting nonetheless.
I bet he didn't sleep at all the night before. Ted was really afraid to die.
Oh no, how would you feel if you knew that you were going to be executed the next day? Like, I wouldn't even know what to do with myself. I'd be shaking in my boots, trembling.
I really can't even imagine it, but like I've also heard testimony from other serial killers who were ready to die.
I mean,
I don't know, but still, I don't.
would you rather wait in a cell to just rot and die, or would you rather just like get peace and just move on?
Wow, that's heavy. That's I have no idea. That's a really hard call.
I don't know. Let us know, listeners. What would you rather do? Would you rather sit in a cell for the rest of your life, or would you rather be executed? That's a tough question.
Hey, I actually have a bit before we tie off. I have 2 things I want to tell you. The first one is I included a little bit of psychology.
Okay, yes, please.
I did take a look at a couple photos of Ted Bundy's brain scans while he was actually alive. Actually, yeah, he does actually have something wrong with his brain, but it's not from a head injury or anything like that. This is something that he was likely born with. But it could also be affected through early childhood. So a lot of the impressions that his grandfather left could affect what I'll tell you about the brain abnormality.
So he's basically psychosocial at this point.
So the part of the brain called the orbital cortex, that controls your impulsions and emotional responses. And then there's the amygdala, and that regulates fear response. So the part of the brain that controls impulsions and emotion responses, and then also the part of the brain that regulates your fear response, both showed significant less activity on his brain scans. Yeah, so if you look at if you look at a brain scan, those 2 areas specifically would usually come up. The photos that you'll see online come up as yellow and red. Those areas you'll see significant less activity, and those are the orbital cortex and the amygdala. Anyway, so it would make sense for Ted to reach out for stimuli resulting in impulsive behavior, thrill-seeking, we mentioned that, and just have a general less amount of fear. So he did cope well with fear beyond childhood. He did have a flaring temper when triggered, and I thought his ego, my notes refer to it as palpable.
Do you think that Ted was more in control than maybe he let on? Maybe he had this side of him in his head where he didn't want to do those things, and he could have chose that, but he let the evil side win. Because, as a person, we both know that we look at certain things and we're like, okay, we could either A, do the right thing, or B, do the wrong thing. And we choose as a person to do the right thing. well, maybe Ted had more control than we think he did, and it wasn't just impulse and jonesing, as you would say. Maybe he just chose to do the wrong thing the whole entire time. Well, I'm going to say it one more time. I'm so very excited that we are done with Ted Bundy. You got fried, you're gone out of our lives, and you're not around to inflict on the lives of our women and children that exist now today. I think this has been a very great run for our first 2 podcast episodes. What do you think,
I
Charlie?
think so too. It's been a lot of fun, a lot of research. We're still learning as we go, but I've noticed a lot of improvement. So, and I'm really excited to get into our next case.
And this concludes our part 1 and part 2 of Ted Bundy. Make sure that you guys send your inquiries to We the Jury podcast 2023 at Gmail. And also follow us on our Instagram, we.the.jury podcast. We really appreciate all of these supports. Please hang with us as we grow and get better.
Sorry, what?
Charlie,
Sorry.
say something. Say bye. Bye. And this has been a wonderful episode of We the Jury podcast. Oh no, you cut off. Gotta do it again.
Ready?
Okay, ready? And thank you so much for listening to We the Jury. Oh fuck, we gotta start over again. Fuck. Okay, ready? All right. And this has been a fucking wild ride. Thank you for listening to No, Charlie, fuck. All right. And thank you so much for tuning into
We
the Jury podcast.
Bye.